Hello. Welcome to the second part of the plush world timeline. Let's get started. The creation of Bimbo. In March of 1930, Max Slicer asked the ink team to create a cartoon dog named Bimbo for his animation studio, Fleischer Studio. Mickey's Dog. In the short The Chain Gang, Walt and Iwerks had the ink team to create a cartoon dog, and this dog would later become Pluto. Swing You Sinners. In the cartoon Swing You Sinners, ghostly spirits from hell punish Bimbo for his misdeeds, condemning his soul to cartoon hell. Cuphead. In 1930, two brothers, Cuphead and Mugman, decide to go to the Devil's Casino, and Cuphead gambles their souls away, so they go around Inkle Isles collecting souls, and then Cuphead beats up the devil. The Start. The day Alistair got syndication rights to own his own radio show, even though he's Black Heritage in 1930, he went home to tell his mother and found her dead with his drunk father drinking. So Al grabbed an axe and killed him. The creation of Foxy. In 1931, two of Disney's writers, Hugh Harman and Rudolph Ising, asked the ink team to create a cartoon Fox for Warner Brothers. Disney's disapproval. It was obvious that Foxy was rendered after Mickey Mouse, and Walt Disney threatened his old friend with a lawsuit, so Ising knew what he had to do. The death of Foxy. At the end of the 1931 short One More Time, Foxy gets shot and killed by criminals that were paid by Ising to kill him, and this landed him in cartoon hell. The creation of Goofy. In 1932, Disney and Iwerks asked Inc. to create a tall dog character originally named Dippy, but then got named Goofy. The Warner siblings. Tom Palmer asked the ink team to create three more characters, Yakko, Wacko, and Dot, to be the sidekicks for Warner star Buddy, but were locked in the water tower for being too zany. And then Buddy was replaced by Porky Pig because he was just hella boring, man. Relapse Mouse. In 1932, Disney tried to rewrite the Mickey Mouse and Hell cartoon and made a new short called Heartbroken, where Mickey goes insane and his eyes turn into TV static, and he kills tragic versions of Goofy and Minnie with a shotgun, but even this was scrapped. The Mad Doctor. Both versions of Mickey Goes to Hell being rejected didn't stop Disney from making dark cartoons, and a couple months later releases another cartoon called The Mad Doctor, where Mickey saves Pluto from said Mad Doctor, starting a decades-long grudge. The death of Flip the Frog. Iwerks left Disney to work on a series of shorts with the character Flip the Frog, but in 1933 Flip's cartoons failed, so Bendy, Mickey, Oswald, and Felix showed up to get the ink team's ink back. Attempted redesign. Iwerks tried to recreate Flip after his death and made a redesign and two new characters, Flip missing his buttons and Schwartz just having a bow tie, a tall rabbit character, and a clown character based off Fleischer's Coco the Clown. But Iwerks just abandoned them and just went back to Disney. The death of Bimbo. In 1933, after Fleischer made Bimbo stop appearing in cartoons, the Ink Demons sucked him down into cartoon hell. But unlike the others who were contained on film reels, Bimbo free roams with chains attached to his arms. The deal with Rosie. One day, Alistair summoned a hell demon named Rosie and made a deal with her to continue his fun in hell and become an overlord. The death of Alistair. In 1933, during a body hiding, Alistair was mistaken for a deer and shot dead. And now he's pushing up daisies where the sun don't shine. The deal with Alistair. One day, Bill Cipher was called to Plush World by the Axolotl in the case of the Southwest radio killer, Alistair, and Bill said, "Give him to me and I'll make a great story of that axe." The Axolotl obliged. Creation of Donald. In 1934, Wall and Ub wanted the Inking to create two characters, for a short called The Wise Little Hen, a cartoon duck named Donald, and a cartoon pig named Peter. Audiences liked Donald more, so he's transferred into the Mickey cartoons. The Cartoon Cat. In 1934, Satan understood that toons flocked to Plush World, so he absorbed the family cartoon character, Cartoon Cat, and it turned into a literal monster. Bill Cipher and the Fox. In 1934, Bill Cipher made a deal with a young unnamed fox with the capability to talk and told her to make him the portal to unleash Weird-Mageddon. Fox birth. During this deal, the fox met a male fox ran off in the forest to make sweet fox love, and the deal she had was to race his pup while working for Bill. But on her way back to Plush World, she was shot and killed by Amos Slade. Todd. After her death, an owl named Big Mama found an owner for this fox pup, and his new owner, Widow Tweed, named him Todd. Todd and Copper. The same year, Todd's mom's killer, Amos Slade, brought home a coonhound puppy he named Copper, and during an adventure, they became friends. Hunting trip. That winter, Amos brought Copper and his other hunting dog, Chief, on a hunting trip. They wouldn't return until next spring. That winter. The winter of 1935, Copper got a bit bigger and learned where his place was. A hunting dog. And hunting dogs hunt stuff, including fox. Dying friendship. In 1935, the spring Copper came back. Todd came to see him. Copper said he should leave, but then Amos and Chief started hunting Todd, and Todd got chased on a train track, almost killing Chief. Todd in the forest. Slade was not happy with this and told Tweed the next time he sees Todd, he's going to be hung on a wall. Tweed had no choice but to bring Todd back to the forest. Todd and Fixie. Big Mama decided to help Todd by finding him a mate and decided to match him up with a nice young fox named Vixie. Todd versus Copper. Copper and Slade decided to go avenge Sheep by trying to hunt and kill Todd, but then they were attacked by a bear and Todd saved them, and both decided to spare Todd. Pluto's Judgment Day. Disney tried one more time to make dark comedy short with one of his characters going to hell, but instead of doing Mickey, he did Mickey's dog Pluto, and he's punished for crimes against cats, but unlike Mickey Goes to Hell at Heartbreak, this was a dream. Creation of Daffy Duck. In 1937, Tex Avery and Bob Clampett asked the Ink Team to create what they hoped would be the #1 star of Warner Brothers, a cartoon duck named Daffy. Anime hate. In 1938, Felix was given an anti-human speech when Mickey brought up the propaganda of anime film Evil Mickey Attacks Japan. He was just mad he was being used unauthorized. Tensions rise. Henry had to get money by being a paperboy, and in his teens, learned after almost 20 years after the First World War ended, tensions were still on the rise for another war because fascism became very popular in Europe. The creation of Rudolph. In 1939, Robert L. May asked the Ink Team to create a cartoon reindeer named Rudolph, and May gave him to Santa's top reindeer with honor, but Rudolph has a red nose suspected to be a birth defect. The 40s. The creation of Tom and Jerry. In 1940, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera asked the Ink Team to create a cartoon cat and mouse originally named Jasper and Shanks, but were later changed to Tom and Jerry. Cypher Symphonies. In 1940, Bill met Elias Inkwell to make cartoons, but during the screening of it, Bill released live bees into the theater and gave Inkwell a bad name. That is such a Bill thing to do. The creation of Bugs Bunny. In 1940, Tex Avery and Bob Clampett asked the Ink Team to create originally a one-off cartoon rabbit named Bugs, But then they grew attached to Bugs, making him the star of Warner Bros., making Daffy a bit jealous. The Illusion of Living. In 1942, Joey Drew wrote a book called The Illusion of Living, on how his company would capture the ink demon forced to create new characters and their new ink machine. They captured it. A month later in February, Joey Drew Studios captured the ink demon and forced it to create the ink machine for them. The Religion of the Ink Demon. Joey was right after some of the higher-ups at Joey Drew's came to Plush World to kidnap the Ink Demon. The second Sammy saw the Ink Demon, he started bowing to it and grabbed the bendy mask. Miller in World War II. After his father died of a lung hemorrhage, Miller signed up for the military to fight in World War II, and surprisingly came out unscathed. Commando Duck. In 1942, Disney sent Donald to go fight in World War II. Donald had many adventures, and it was pretty dark, and this was used as a propaganda film. Bambi the Movie. The Walt Disney Company released an animated documentary about the events of Bambi as a way to teach people that hunting is wrong, but this didn't work though. Der Führer's Face. In 1943, during his deployment, Donald was captured by Nazi Germany and forced to make bombs for Hitler. And Donald got pretty bad PTSD from this, but Disney came back and saved Donald from Hitler. Monsters vs. Humans. During World War II, there was an undocumented fight between humans and monsters, and they sealed the monsters with a magic spell underground. Erased from time. The scientists of the underground, Reverend Dr. Gaster, was experimenting with the Dark World, which got what would become the Device Friend, an incarnation of Plush World's evilness, to wipe Gaster from existence. Goners. The device would also wipe all of the monsters that followed Gaster's teachings to release the Dark World from space to stop them from stopping a plan the device called the Roaring that would end existence, creating Goners. Fredbear's Singing Show. In 1945, Disney called not Disney. In 1945, Henry created the traveling circus show Fredbear's Singing Show, featuring a bear, but the bear eventually got repossessed because Miller couldn't pay for it anymore. The Death of Old Major. In 1945, on a farm in Warwick, a large boar named Old Major is telling the other animals of Manor Farm about a dream he had in the song The Beast of England, but after singing, he dies. The Rebellion. One day, the farm's abusive and neglectful owner, Mr. Jones, forgets to feed the animals because he was drunk. So they break into the farm to eat, and while he finds and tries to whip them, they stand up to him and chase him off the farm. The Seven Commandments. The two animals that were put in charge were Jones's two bred-for-show pigs, Snowball and Napoleon, that always spot. And their first act was to put laws for the new animal farm on a pillar. Whatever goes upon 2 legs is an enemy. Whatever goes upon 4 legs or has wings is a friend. No animal shall wear clothes. No animal shall sleep in a bed. No animal shall drink alcohol. No animal must kill another animal. All animals are equal. The Battle of Cowshed. Later, Jones and his neighbors went to go get Manor Farm back. All of them had sticks except for Jones, who had a gun. Snowball fought with the soldiers and ran at Jones and got shot in the back. A sheep and the dog died, and the animals won. Napoleon's dogs. Later, Napoleon found the dogs orphaned puppies and took them to a secluded loft away from the rest of the farm, to teach them his very flawed ways and not Snowball's. Napoleon Lucky. After equipping his army of dogs, Napoleon starts a father-son bond with a young porker on the farm, which he'd saved during the re- revolution, named Lucky. The creation of Flippy. In 1945, the god of Onslaught asked the Ink team to create a friend for him because he felt lonely, and Flippy was created. Bob and Flippy. After Bill left him, Elias needed someone else to make cartoons about, and he summoned the god of Onslaught and his friend Flippy. Elias slapped Onslaught with white paint and renamed him Bob. Success. Bob and Flippy's cartoons became fairly popular, with Bob's cartoon Satanic Panic and Demon Hunt, and Flippy appearing in Cold War propaganda films. The death of Elias Inkwell. When Bob found out they were being used, he possesses Elias's body, but Bob isn't as good at possessing people than Bill is, and Elias' body died on the inside and just rotted off Bob. Scientists would later believe Inkwell died of bubonic plague. The Fair Prism. After seeing the abundance of megalomania in his creations and Bill, the Axel created a prison/psych ward outside of time called Fair Prism to help treat people like Bill. Snowball's exile. In 1946, Snowball was giving the other animals an idea for a windmill, where Napoleon made a rather loud squeal to get his dogs, now fully grown, and the dogs chased Snowball off the farm. Napoleon's in charge. After that, Napoleon declared himself as the leader of the animal farm with his right hoof man, Squealer, and his dogs. He also said that Snowball was a traitor, and others just went with it. Napoleon also changed without anyone's knowledge some of the commandments. The most major one was all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. More traitors. Napoleon wanted to trade with Felton Farm for things like jam and traded chicken eggs, but when the chicken spoke against this, Napoleon said that they were traitors. The other dogs went with it. Them, ducks, and the sheep who were labeled traitors, too, were executed by the dogs. Sorry, folks. Sold Boxer. Napoleon and the pigs decided that they should take some time off, where Boxer, the farm's best worker, dropped a stone on his leg, making him unable to work. So what does Napoleon do? Put Boxer in retirement? No, you stupid idiot. He sells him to a glue factory. Because he's a horse. That's what dictators do to horse. Rallying against Napoleon. Lucky and Boxer were best buds, and after he learned that Napoleon sold him for more whiskey, Lucky goes to the other animals, makes up to his crush Puff, and starts a rally against Napoleon when they started storming the farmhouse. Napoleon's downfall. Lucky wasn't Boxer's only friend. He had a pen mate in Benjamin, the donkey, and after hearing Lucky's rally idea, him and the other animals tried to overthrow Napoleon, and when they eventually did, he starts clapping. Smart move. Napoleon started clapping, telling the other animals, well done. Napoleon told them that last night, a yellow triangle taught him the secrets of immortality, would teach the others if they let him still reign supreme. They would so they let him, so they would live forever. The 50s. The cult of Cyphertology. In the 1950s, a man named Elias Birchtree was preaching about Cyphertology, but he died the other day after choking on a dime. But he actually was possessed by Bill. He got the whole town to join Bill's cult, except one woman who set a building on fire with the Cyphertologists inside, leaving Bob Bilzeb, Skid's dad, Carol McCormick, and Stuart McCormick. The creation of Trickor. In 1950, Delilah Keene asked Inking to create a cartoon pumpkin named Trickor, but weirdly, for some odd reason, Trickor couldn't form right and came out of the ink lifeless. The creation of V. In 1950, after Trickor failed to be created, Delilah created a creation she called a hybrid tune, a television character named V Vision 1. That was a machine who ran on the Ink Demon's ink. The evolution of the Mogwai. In 1950, there was a house being built in Plush World, so they decided to only come out at night, and the species that decided to live in Plush World evolved into a creature called the Mogwai. The effects of suburban life. For some reason, the inhabitants didn't fight back when a house was built in the middle of Plush World, and a shed was built on top of the Dark World portal. But the worst part, a fence blocked Plush World off from another part of it, which formed the wretched anime world. Grimm's Field and Gravity Falls. After Plush World was fully made, 2 yards long, the residents decided to give their community a name other than Plush World. Half of them wanted the name Grimm's Field, and half wanted Gravity Falls. So they left the top half be called Gravity Falls, and the bottom Grimm's Field. Azrael and Kara. In 1950, a human named Kara fell in the underground and met the Dreamer family, who adopted them and became the adopted sibling of Azrael. Azrael, the incarnation of the non-physical Plush World god, the god of hyperdeath. Their deal. Kara poisoned themselves to try to break the barrier between humans and monsters, and put their soul in Azrael. The humans thought Azrael was a threat, so they shot and killed him, and his dust was scattered on his father's golden flowers. Rudolph's kids. In the 1950s, Rudolph and this doe named Clarice got married and have 2 kids, one named Rudolph Jr. and one named Redacted. The original Pines twins. In 1951, Stanley and Stanford Pines were born in Glashard Beach, Los Angeles, to a couple who owned a pawn shop. Stanford was a little different, though, having 6 fingers on each hand. This would equal to Stanford representing the 6-fingered hand on the cipher wheel. Lux and cartoons. In 1952, Lux decided to possess the theatrical cartoon star, Mr. Ring-a-Ding, and when people in the theater made him laugh, Mr. Ring-a-Ding kidnapped them. Mr. Ring-a-Ding. Doctor and assistant time traveled to that time and inspected the disappearance of those people and encountered Mr. Ring-a-Ding. Lux played a few games with them, but left them alone after absorbing sunlight. Bill and Vincent. The way Vincent Whitman got the power to kill all his competition and become the leader of his TV program was through Bill. Brighter. Vincent did what Bill told him. He killed his competition to get to the top of this TV studio and made a literal cult following. But during his speech, there was water in the room and a TV fell on Vincent's head, electrocuting and killing him. Welcome to Hell, Vox. The second Vincent arrived in Hell, he started screaming. After a while, he learned that the TV was his head now, and went under the alias Vox. The simplest things. In 1953, the last theatrical Mickey short, The Simple Things, came out. It would also be the last short Disney would make pending his death 13 years later. The Television Act. In 1954, a British law was passed that televisions must be overrun with commercials and advertisements, and against her better judgment, Delilah shut down V to keep her from this act, even though Plush World and V as a whole don't take place in Britain. Kermit the Frog. In 1955, Jim Henson made a frog character named Kermit the Frog, who would become Henson's main star. Alistair rejects Fox. In 1955, at a bar one night, Fox was hanging out with Alistair when he gave some suits that Alistair was inspiring, wanted to make a deal with Alistair, but Alistair shut him down, saying, "There are no friends in hell, Vincent," making Fox bitter and angry. Flippy in Vietnam. In 1956, Bob sent Flippy to fight in Vietnam with Sneaky, Mouse Kaboom, and unnamed bear soldier, Flinkpy. During Vietnam, Flippy saw horrible things with his friend Sneaky Mouse Kaboom getting killed, and unnamed bear soldier dying to a gas attack. This made Flippy crash out on the Vietnamese soldiers. His retirement. Near the end of his deployment, Flippy got his hands blown off with a projectile and had him retire. Don't worry, he gets his hands stitched back on. Peppino in Vietnam. In 1955, after Flippy retired, Peppino stepped up into filling Flippy's slot in the army, and like Flippy, ended up surviving because like Flippy, Peppino has Toon Force. You killed Boris. A little time before his death, Joey removed Boris's guts for absolutely no reason. Joey lied to Benny and said he was fixing him, although Benny was done with his BS. So now Boris has no guts, because he replaced them with mechanical string. The death of Joey Drew. In 1957, Joey Drew died of old age right around the time he retired. Around the time he tried sending a letter to Henry to revisit his studio for old time's sake, which got lost in the mail. And Joey's soul was absorbed into the ink demon for his sin of locking it in his studio. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. In 1957, in a snowflake inhabited by Who's, there was a creature that hated Christmas most, called the Grinch, because that was his name. So on Christmas Eve, he stole all their gifts, had a literal change of heart, and gave them back. The good thing is it doesn't. Job doesn't start until the end of July. Alistair Noun's Nifty. In 1958, a deranged little serial killer named Nifty arrives in hell, and Alistair made a deal with her, which means he now owns her soul, but she didn't mind much. The 60s. Kicked from the Ink Cult. In 1960, the Ink Demon kicked Delilah out of the Ink Cult after hearing a plan she had to mass-produce tunes. And it wasn't a huge loss. Delilah didn't really create anything new for the Ink Demon in 10 years. Meaning Stanley Kubrick. In the 1960s, Bill met Stanley Kubrick. Stan was asked by NASA to help fake the moon landing. Bill made a deal with Stan. He'll help fake it, and he would make the portal. NASA couldn't make the portal, which pissed Bill off. So Bill targeted his anger at Stan, giving him nightmares, and then NASA actually went to the moon. Kubrick's career. Bill gave Stan nightmares, which inspired Kubrick with movies. Some notable ones were The Shining in 2001, A Space Odyssey. 15 Dalmatians. In 1960, a Dalmatian named Pongo meets a female Dalmatian named Perdita, and they have 15 puppies, but Cruella de Vil, Perdita's owner's old schoolmate, wants to skin the puppies to make a fur coat. 84 more. Cruella had her cronies Horace and Jasper get 84 more puppies to go with the others like Lucky, Patch, and Rolly. But Pongo and Perdita saved them, and now their owners have 101 Dalmatians. Patches going to an adventure. In 1962, the Radcliffes decided to move to the outer countryside to get away from Cruella, but one of the pups, Patch, got left behind, and Cruella used him to get to the other 98. Then Patch teamed up with Thunderbolt to rescue his family. His first kill. One day, a boy named William Afton returned home for working at Pizza Hut when he saw his supporting mother dead on the floor and his abusive dad on the couch. So Afton grabbed an axe and killed his father. The creation of Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. One day, Afton was found by Henry roaming the streets, where he welcomed in to work at his circus. Afton was really into two things: graphic design and robotics, and on the scene created two new mascots for Fredbear's, a cartoon version of the character on the billboards, Fredbear, and a rabbit character named Spring Bonnie. Snoopy versus the Red Baron. In 1965, the dog of Plushville resident Charlie Brown, Snoopy, started sitting on his doghouse and pretended to fight the World War II plane, the Red Baron. showing he's indifferent to the Germans like a lot of Americans at the time. Breaking Stanford's project. A college across the country wanted to accept Stanford, and Stanley didn't want him to go, so he lashed out his anger on his project, breaking it on accident. Kicked out. After Stanford found out that his project was broke, he lashed out at Stanley, and then their dad kicked Stanley out of the house until he redeemed himself. The short marriage. In 1967, Stanley met this lady named Marilyn, who was actually Ida, the owl lady in disguise. Their marriage lasted 48 hours, and Ida stole some of Stan's money. Success. While Stanley was away, Stanford went to another college called Backup some more and made some buddies like Fiddleford McGucket, was attracted to the Valley of Plush World after finding out it was a valley of weirdness. He didn't really find anything good to study, at least, not yet. The defunct of Joey Drew's. In 1967, Joey Drew Studios defunct because it refused to use newer graphics and decided to use the same ones from the 30s, and this filled Bendy and the Ink Monsters with hate. Sammy's religion. Sammy stayed behind at Joey Drew's and fully cemented it to the ink hole and dipped himself into the ink demon and became an ink beast. Mickey Mouse in Vietnam. In 1968, Mickey joined the army and hoped to see the world, but was sent to Vietnam and was shot in the forehead, but survived because he can't kill a tune. The Muppet Movie. In 1968, Kermit met a joke-telling bear named Fozzie, and they drove in the car to find more Muppets and formed the main group of Muppets. Also, they met some bird thing trying to break into television. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. In 1968, Rudolph stars in the Rankin Bass film of the same name, and in it were jerk deer, elves, and a Santa, an elf who wants to be a dentist in an abominable snowman hunting them down. Bambi meets Godzilla. In 1969, Bambi appeared in the animated parody where he meets Godzilla, but Godzilla steps on Bambi, crushing him. But this is only a parody. Bambi doesn't really die. Sesame Street. In 1969, Bill met the creator of Sesame Street, John Cooney. Bill and Cooney made a deal. Cooney would make the portal if Bill appeared in one of the segments of Sesame Street, a snazzy triangle meets a square. The portal didn't work because it was made of Muppet crap. Henson's Nightmare. For some reason, Bill turned his anger at Jim Henson. Bill pulled up the 1966 short Limbo Face in Henson's mind, and that gave him the idea for the segment Count to 10 with Nobody. Freddy's Bread. Afton Miller would launch a bread company with Fredbear and Spring Bonnie being silent salesman for commercials for Freddy's Bread, which is the namesake for the character Freddy Fazbear. Frosty the Snowman. In 1969, a magic hat brought a snowman to life, and some children decided to name him Frosty, and the magician who owns the hat wants it back, so he tries to melt Frosty, but Santa told him, "You're a bad person," he started crying like a little baby. The 1970s. Cypher's Deer. Around December, one of Rudolph's kids was kinda into cults, and one day they found a cult of Scientology and a new religion that started 10 years ago, and agreed to met up with some members, but the cult made them go insane. Jumba and Hamsterville. In the 1960s in space, Dr. Jacques von Hamsterville had Jumba Jokiba create 629 experiment pods that formed in water, and all of them were illegal, but were with Hamsterville's funding. The Spring Locks. Afton was also into robotics and made a costume version of the Spring Bonnie character with spring lock mechanisms, which were very dangerous, and Henry, for some unknown reasons, poured water on Afton, killing him, but through sheer force of will, after he possessed himself, interesting Miller. Archgate Films. In 1971, Drew's old business partner Nathan Arch bought the rights for Bendy, seeing that now Joey was dead. But Bendy wasn't really happy about this and sacrificed Nathan to the Ink Demon and used Archgate Studio for the Ink Demon's monsters. The Norjack. In 1971, EXE decided to have a little fun and possess a man's body and hijack a plane under the surname Dan Cooper and told the stewardess he had a bomb in his bag and wanted $200,000 in $20 bills and 2 parachutes. The thing is, those parachutes didn't work, and EXE exited the man's body and made him plummet. This enraged TD because the only thing he did in years wasn't even violent, so TD told him he would commit something devastating. Mario in Vietnam. Mario was in Vietnam in 1973 and delivered bombs to the enemies, unlike Luigi, who drove around in his van like a dirty hippie. Delilah's first name. While looking through the Disney office, Delilah found the original 1929 sketch of Connie, and she gave her to her partner Arthur to make a design for M001 Connie Balinsky. But Delilah changed her mind and wanted to make the first main an older character. She made a pumpkin character. The first tunes. 15 years before Gardenview opened, Delilah used a combination of the God of Corn and Destruction's Icar and made 10 tunes. Scraps, Shrimpo, Finn, Eclipse, Coco, Louie, Yada, and Blot. The Deer in Gardenview. One day during preparations, the deer broke into Gardenview and drank some of the Icar that belonged to the God of Deer, and it made it pregnant with the reincarnation of the God of Deer, which I guess makes a little sense. The reincarnation of the God of Deer. That night, the deer gave birth to their son and brought him to Rudolph's house in hope of a better life, and Rudolph named him Rudy after himself. Rudolph learns. After chatting with Delilah about Rudy, Rudolph learns that his grandson is the reincarnation of the 15th and last plush-world god, and Rudolph inherited the red nose from. Trickor and Eclipse. After the first batch of tunes were created, Delilah recreated a previous creation of hers from the Ink Demon, from the Ink cult Trickor, the pumpkin, now of Icar. She gave him his pumpkin farm, but he found the tune Eclipse, the werewolf, in one of the pumpkins and decided to keep her as a pet. Flowey the Flower. In 1975, Alvis, the new scientist of the underground, was testing an experiment on a flower, and it spawned a golden talking flower of Azrael's consciousness and no soul. As you expect, it was torture. Couldn't feel anything. Azrael first showed himself to Asgore, who was emotional to his son's reincarnation. But Flowey had no emotion, so he went to see Toriel, and she too was emotional, but he didn't feel anything and tried to off himself. But he wanted to reset, and when his dad didn't recognize him, he came up with a fake name, Flowey. Flowey the Flower. The Illuminatus Trilogy. In 1975, the men Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shea were both asked by Bill to make the portal to the Night Realm, which they denied. Bill also told them about his hate for the Illuminati, so they wrote a trilogy of novels about the Illuminati, symbolizing the Illuminati in Bill's image to piss him off. Undertale Yellow. The same year he came back, a human named Clover fell through the underground and met Flowey, who started to push the whole Killer Be Killed thing. But eventually Clover was killed by Asgore for his soul. The creation of Goob. In 1976, Delilah and Arthur made another character for their cartoon Goob the Fluffy Crab. But She didn't know what to do with him until she decided to remodel Scraps a tiny bit. Tweaking Scraps. The original idea for Scraps was to have her brotherless, and Scraps was even a dude. But after Coop was created, Scraps was changed her into a big sister to better fit Delilah's vision. Heathcliff leaves town. In 1978, after the contrast, Garfield managed to run another orange-striped cat named Heathcliff out of town, but now he just circles around the neighborhood around Plush World like a weird secret boss. Alistair nouns Husk. In 1970, a gambler named Husk arrived in hell and became an overlord and owned his own casino, but one night, Alistair arrived and Husk gambled his soul away. The Skeleton Brothers. In 1978, since Papyrus skeletons moved to Snowdon, a town under Plush World, Santa, who learned about the overground Plush World, declared himself as the guy who makes people have a bad time. Fredbear's Family Diner. In 1979, William Atkinson's partner, another man named Henry Emily, teamed up to open a Chuck E. Cheese inspired restaurant using Golden Spring Lock animatronics. The Secret of the Mimic. In 1979, Fazbear sent Arnold, the janitor, to the murder factory to get something that Edwin owed Fazbear, and Arnold was attacked by Edwin's creation, the Mimic. Well, that was the second part of the Plush World timeline. Subscribe and touch the notification bell to be notified for when parts 3, 4, and 5 come out.